once, but my ass.
I'm only 4. Bonjour, Monsieur Pussycat.
Cracking toast, Robert.
Start spreading the news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the short podcast about short films. I'm your host, and we are discussing the Academy Award for Best Animated Short. Today's episode is about the 54th year of the award at the 58th Academy Awards, which celebrates the films of 1985. Today's guest is returning for the 6th time. You know her well as our favorite short, Miss Zita Short. Hello, Zita.
Hello, Jackie. Thank you so much for having me back on. It's a real honor for me, and I'm just thrilled whenever you reach out and say, "Oh, this episode is open." It makes me really happy.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that the episodes are open. I've just had these planned months and months in advance that it's like, okay, this is going to be a Zeta episode. But yeah, it's always fun to talk to you, like whether it's my podcast or yours. Is like it's fun to talk to you. You're a great person to talk to, and which shows in how often we get on long tangents, and these episodes end up just the longest. Like two of your episodes are just the longest episodes we've ever had, which is great. I really like that.
Yes, I'm a fan of it too, but it is a bit of a concern for us today because a window into the world of podcast recorders, you are recording 3 podcast episodes today, like a maniac, back to back. You are going to be so tired once this is finished, but I do applaud you for being such a dedicated podcaster.
I am excited. It's like it doesn't even feel like tiring to me, just because this is something I really enjoy doing, especially like just talking about films with my friends and stuff. And it's really going to be 4 episodes because I think I might record another episode, like one of my bonus episodes, after we do our double feature tonight. Right? So yeah, it's going to be a lot, but it's going to be fun either way.
Maniac.
Look, this is fun for me. This is my leisure time. I enjoy it. But yes, let's get into the formalities. Remind us, what is your familiarity with the Best Animated Short category?
It's very limited, especially in comparison to, say, Christoph or some of the other brilliant guests that you've had on. But slowly, step by step, I'm sort of familiarizing myself with it. And I definitely think I know more than I did the first episode. So that's certainly an improvement.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you like through your 6 appearances, you have learned a lot about the category, whether it's from me or just by watching the shorts. It's like this is the kind of this is why I enjoy like bringing like the same guests back over and over again. Not just because I really enjoy talking to you, but because, you get to see the category evolve. Like you were here during the 1930s when Silly Symphonies reigned supreme. You were here during Tom and Jerry's reign. Then you came back during the 1960s when the studio shorts were just completely destroyed. They weren't making them anymore. Or you came here during the transitional period. That's right. And then your last episode was near the end of the 70s, and now you're here in the 1980s.
Yes.
Yeah, just
Sorry.
a whole timeline.
Yeah, no, it's really cool, and especially to see the evolution there is fascinating. And something that I've really liked is that, as you've pointed out, things do get a lot more sort of independent as things go on. In those early years, all of the major studios are dominating the category. And then later on, you have this Czech animated short that is sort of a veiled critique of the government that gets nominated. And I think it makes it, to be honest, a lot more interesting than a lot of these other award categories where there's a fairly consistent pool of nominees or a criteria for what can get nominated. Here, it really does seem as though every few years or every decade, they really do change things up in terms of what is fashionable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like that's one of the benefits about like the Academy not really caring about this category is that just like you could get some weird stuff nominated here. It's just like some stuff that like if it were like a feature film or something, the Academy would not let it in, and just because it's not the kind of stuff they tend to nominate. But especially at this time when the pool ends up being so small, it's that like those kind of art house favorites, maybe he can get in, but also just the weird films that nobody really likes, but uh still people find the some kind of weird appreciation for them can get into. It's just like it it this category is just so eclectic, and that's why I love it. Yes.
Yeah,
But yes, let's just get into these nominees. Let's see what this year has in store. And there's only three nominees this year. Our first nominee and the year's winner is Anna and Bella, directed by Borg Rig. This is the first and only nomination for producer Celia Van Dyke, the third woman to win this category. But the real name here should be Borg Ring, as he previously directed another nominee, Oh My Darling. And I feel upset on his behalf that his name isn't on that Oscar. But I digress. With Celia, there is also fairly little to say. And with Ring, we said most of it in his last episode. We talked about him, going through his whole background. After Oh My Darling, it's mainly just a list of accomplishments and awards. He does have an autobiography, which would be very helpful, but I also don't want to spend 20 euros plus shipping to the US just for this segment. So instead, I'll say congrats on the Winsor McKay Award and becoming a knight. And I'm sorry you died in 2018 at the age of 97. And now we'll move on to the film at hand. Anna and Bella is about two sisters reminiscing over their life together, from their fond childhood memories to more serious ones in their older years, as their love lives drive a wedge between them. Zita, what did you think of our winner?
I felt that it was very sweet. To me, it was very Dutch in the way that it sort of combines this quality of sentimentality with a lot of darker elements. And there does seem to be this fixation on vulgarity that a lot of filmmakers from that country have. And you kind of get that here. There is this sort of sinister undertone to a lot of what they do. And I liked the fact that even the good times, as reflected in the past, are not presented in a more normal light, you would say. In their old age, these women are presented as these kind of amorphous blobs. But even as young women, where we get scenes where they're flirting with boys, or the man that one of them loves seduces his sister away from her, they move weirdly, they behave weirdly, they're walking around in tops, and I guess they're pants, but they're drawn in such a way that it looks like they're just naked down there.
Yeah,
You
they're very
get
skin tight pants.
yeah, you get these sort of odd touches, and then you have truly wonderful graphics here and there, such as the whole sequence where they're driving in that car. I just loved the way that not the camera is positioned, but the decision that the artist has made to kind of zoom in on it instead of giving us a wide shot as we would typically expect when you're watching a car driving around. And it really does set this kind of off-putting tone. Everything is a little bit too close for comfort, and you have this feeling that something is not quite right. And I think it is that usual trick of taking an image that's very familiar and kind of othering it and making it feel slightly unfamiliar. Then again, it is startlingly effective. And I was just intrigued throughout. Even just the fact that you have, I would say, so many different styles of animation on display here. Certain shots could be considered minimalistic, and then you'll have this stylistic freak out in the next scene. And to me, that was really engaging. And you can certainly see the 80s influence here too, which I kind of love as a bad taste touch.
Yes. What really struck me about this film was the animation touches that you were describing. How, like, for the most part, the film is it's animated in a very traditional style. Like it is very reminiscent of like early Disney stuff, which in no small part is thanks to the fact that Donald Duck does appear in this film, uh, which I thought was funny. Um, but yeah, but then we get to the driving sequence after, the sister has stolen the other sister's boyfriend, and she's really tired and angry and driving home, and you get this vision into her mind. It turns into this really minimalist UPA kind of animation depicting her inner rage, her turmoil and stuff. And it's just like, you if you watch like the first 5 minutes of the short and ask somebody what's going to happen next, you wouldn't really expect it to take such a dark turn, or especially once the car ends up crashing, and then I think the sister dies. I'm not entirely sure if like it's a weird ending, because like I'm not sure if it's meant to imply that like the sister died in that accident, and this whole thing has been like an image from heaven, like the whole framing device is them looking at the pictures or whatever, or if like the sister didn't end up fine, and then it's just like that's the last story that we're going to talk about. They don't really delve into like them growing old or anything like that. um but yeah, I did really love the animation. I did also really enjoy how kind of sweet the story was, until, and that kind of juxtaposition of like the sweeter youthful memories with the older and more serious memories as well. Oh, and it's just like, yeah, it's just a really nice short. I'm really glad it won this. It's just a, yeah. I'm,
Hmm.
I'm running out of things to say, but I really did like it.
Yes, and I did appreciate the fact that it doesn't create a binary between their childhoods where they were happy and they got along and there was no disharmony or discord between them, and then the adolescence and then their adult lives where there is a lot of conflicts there. I think there's still this sense that there's a balance, even in their adult lives, between that love and that close sisterly bond and them despising one another and hating the fact that they're competing for the attentions of these men. And so I think it creates more of a fascinating portrait, a more nuanced portrait of this relationship than you might get out of other storytellers who I think would go for the easy pathos of, oh, wasn't it great back when they were both innocent and they didn't have to worry about these things? And wouldn't it be nice to go back to being 5 years old again?
Mm.
And this movie seems more willing to reckon with the fact that, yes, as an adult, you do have to accept moral relativism. Things tend to get a bit more complicated, but at the same time, those emotions that you feel can be richer and more intense because you have a wider emotional range in a way. You have more emotional intelligence. And I was really touched by that. This is not just the, sorry, I shouldn't be dissing this person, but a sort of Steven Spielberg type message where he really fetishizes childhood and innocence in a way that I've never fully warmed to. Obviously, he's a brilliant filmmaker. Love E.T. I just, whenever I sort of sit back and think about, so what's he actually trying to say here? It
Mhm.
doesn't really speak to me on a personal level.
Yeah. Uh, I definitely agree with your sentiment about the film. I personally don't like E.T., but that's beside the point. Uh, but yeah, you're. I definitely agree with how like it there is such a nice nuance with their relationship to the point where it does just make the relationship feel more real. Like these do they the short in its limited runtime, it does really create this full relationship between the sisters. Like it does feel like a real like these were real people. It's just like this is a real kind of sisterly relationship that you would see like anyone have, like see any two pairs of sisters. Like this is something that I imagine like a lot of them would relate to. Oh, and it's like, yeah. And I I want to have more to say. I don't know.
Hmm. No, I think this is again very reflective of the time in which it was made, which sounds like an odd observation because this animated short within the world that they create is sort of timeless. Well,
Yeah.
not completely timeless. There are cars, there are forms of technology that were sort of created in the 20th century, but I do find that it has a lot in common with kind of other 80s foreign language film nominees. There does seem to have been a strong interest in Dutch cinema at this time, and in particular in this form of almost Eastern European influenced black comedy. And I really like this kind of subset of Oscar nominees from this period. A lot of the other awards trends from that decade were not great. I quite like this one, and I sort of wish that they had stayed on this track, but it does seem like this style had a very brief moment in the sun.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of Place in the Sun, another film we talked about. But what other films are you like referencing when you say like this brief trend of Dutch cinema?
So these movies were not nominated, although one of his audio ones were. But I was reading an article in, it was Screen Daily or something from the 80s, where they argued that one of Paul Verhoeven's films was going to get nominated for the Best Foreign Language Film Oscar. I think it was The Fourth Man. So
Hmm.
I understand that that was kind of a big deal at the time. You also have Marlene Goris movies and who are the other notable filmmakers from this period? My memory is failing me, but looking through, I recall when I did a quick quiz of the Wikipedia page for the category, uh, it did show up a lot that these random Dutch films were getting nominated. And so I remember that kind of standing out.
Hmm. Yeah. It I guess this is like a kind of sensibility that you don't see that often in this not just in this category, but in many other films. It's just like, and that's part of what makes the film just kind of feel that makes it stand out in my mind. It stands out in this list of nominees, and it's just like I'm glad it won. I agree with this win. It's a good win.
Mm. So sorry, the movie I was thinking of was The Assault, directed by
Yes.
Bons Rademachers. How do you even speak Dutch?
I
It's
don't, but yes, these actually, yeah, comparing this to the assault, even though like the plots of them are very different, like the kind of framing of them is very similar because that film is kind of two halves. There's one where it's like the main character is a child, and then one as like a young adult, and that's really what this film is because you get like the two sisters being very young together, and then there's a brief like blooming flower sequence, I guess, where they become young adults, young women, and then we get to the love life section. And it's just like it's very much two halves of this story. And that I think I mentioned this earlier, but like that is like my maybe my one complaint about this is that I wish there was more story with them. I wish we saw more of their lives. As it's just like I think there's probably more you could tell, more you could touch on with this kind of relationship. But I guess this is just all that they wanted to do, which is fine. It's like this is still a great movie, but I wish there could have been more to this.
Yeah, sorry for the long pause.
You're
I,
fine.
I feel the same way. It just one of those situations where this is kind of the Oscar thing, I think, and as two people who are obsessed with these awards in a way that is unhealthy, there is
Yes,
this sense that
definitely.
kind of on the peripheries, on the edges, every now and then something interesting happens, or a sort of out of the way, less publicized film, like To Leslie, a small film with a big heart that's nominated. And you think, oh, wow, this is really fascinating. I hope they keep heading in this direction. Something like even Parasite winning, which
Mhm.
was seen as this great triumph for foreign language cinema. And we all thought, oh, wow, they're opening up now. And yet, it's not as though other major South Korean releases have been nominated. And there is this sense that all of those interesting wins are just aberrations. And if they could, they would give the award to films like Coda every single year. And so it's one of the frustrations of being someone who obsessively watches these films that most of the movies that you get to see are like The River, the largely forgotten Sissy Spacek Mel Gibson joint, instead of being something really exciting and intriguing and boundary pushing, like even Tommy, which is not a great movie, is very uneven, but is deeply strange and very much of its time.
I disagree. Tommy is a fantastic film. It is perfect in every way. Uh, but I agree with your point, and I also think it's funny how 2 episodes in a row we're talking about To Leslie, uh, for some reason. But yes, it is. We always hope that the Academy will have broader prospects than the standard Oscar fare or every single year. And every single year, we usually end up disappointed. And at least with most of the winners in most of the categories, these end up very disappointing. Although sometimes we get like a major win that ends up pretty interesting. And sometimes that's even in Best Picture, like with Parasite or Moonlight or things like that. But it's just like the Academy is it's not a monolith. It's just the averaging of the taste of all these different people who vote in it. And it's like sometimes that average leans towards the standard Oscar bait, sometimes it leads towards something better.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel bad in a way whenever I get sort of excited about an Oscar nomination just because it's unexpected. Like the To Leslie nomination, she's very good in that film, and I guess I'm not against her getting nominated, but it's not as though I was really passionate about that film or that performance during the season. I was excited by it just because, oh wow, this sort of throws a spanner in the works.
Mhm.
And that made me feel really bad. Am I just like a gambler or an addict or something where I need to sort of get my fix of the awards shenanigans? Because I think I've been telling myself, oh no, you're a serious cinephile, Zita, and your investment in these awards goes beyond mere interest in the drama, mere prurient interest in these celebrities' love lives. And yet, I'm a bit of a gossip hound. And I think at the end of the day, the fascination that these awards hold for me is probably related more closely to my sort of base instincts than my interest in cinema.
Hmm. It's honestly kind of like a reverse gambling even, because it's like you're not excited when like the predicted outcome happens. It's like, yes, I got it right. It's when the totally unexpected happens, when whether it's Andrea Riseborough and To Leslie, or even other examples from last year like Brian Tyree Henry and Causeway getting nominated. It's just like these kind of random little things. It's like we didn't know that the Academy cared about these movies. We didn't really see like it wasn't in the other award shows, but it's like it's that kind of thing where it's just like they actually stepped out of their comfort zone a little bit, and it's just like it's nice to see that. It's just like it's like an old dog learning new tricks. It's that's how I like to view the Academy. It's just like your old grandfather, and it's just like you. It's like, hey, what was your favorite movie of last year? Oh, I really like Coda. Yeah, you would like Coda. But then when it's like when he says, "Oh, I thought Moonlight was really good," it's like, wow, I didn't know you saw Moonlight. Good for you.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. And for me, I guess it's sort of a form of camp, how determined they are to be middle of the road and stodgy. And so I kind of feel at this point like this is their brand, and I can embrace it. I think they have a different vibe to the other awards shows. And to be honest, if you are looking towards any awards show for great film recommendations, look elsewhere. It's basically a trade show, and that's what makes it fun. Go look at a critic's top 10 list if you want to get a sense of what's actually a good piece of art. And so to me, I guess the fun is in the competitiveness of it all and the campaigning. And every now and then you get someone like Lady Gaga, who is a master of the campaign circuit.
There
She
could be a
turned it
hundred people in a
into
room.
she turned it into a piece of performance art. I honestly, her life during that campaign became a piece of art that was more significant than House of Gucci or even A Star is Born. To be honest, in my eyes, that shot of her on the gondola in Venice,
Oh
her
yes.
forcing a very nervous looking Adam Driver to cup her hips while she tossed her head back and kicked her leg up in the air. These are the things that I want out of stars who are campaigning for the awards. And her fans only made it better. Did you see that tweet sent out by one of her more rabid stands after she wasn't nominated, in which he suggested that people who did not vote for her should be sent to a concentration camp? And okay, the cherry on top of the cake is that the GIF that he attached to this tweet was of her getting railed by Adam Driver at the beginning of that film. Was what were they thinking?
I definitely remember that moment. God, Lady Gaga is just so she has the kind of glamour that is so unmatched, and the kind of headline making that just most actors today do not know how to do. As it's like she you you've seen that tweet recently. You've criticized a tweet when it's recently where it's just like, oh, Zendaya has that kind of old Hollywood sense of like not getting involved in any drama or whatever it was, and it's just like, no. Oh, old Hollywood is filled with so much drama, and it's Lady Gaga who really encompasses that kind of old Hollywood sense, and just like just being absolutely crazy, just so insane, like very much Greer Garson kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we need to get Gaga and like a real Oscar just so she can go on a 10-minute acceptance speech.
Mm, yes. I oh, I don't even know what would happen. Something would shift if she were allowed to give an Oscar acceptance speech in the Best Actress category. I, wow, it would be incredible. I wonder if she would do that thing that Lady Gaga does sometimes, where she's being authentic. And I say this lovingly. There is something amazing about the fact that when she does the whole sort of I'm stripped down, I'm coming out in a t-shirt and jeans, it feels just as affected and or even more affected and performative than when she's in full glamour mode. And
Mhm.
I love that about her.
Yeah, the like comparing her best original song performances between Shallow and then what was the Top Gun song called? Like Hold My Hand or something like that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, her performance of that where she's like apparently like she wasn't even supposed to perform, but then like a day she just put that together, or it was just like just totally stripped back, and it was the most memorable of, at least for me, it was the most memorable of the five best original song performances is that evening.
I guess my one question is, could that moment that we are hypothetically imagining possibly compete with the iconic Joe Calderone skit?
Oh my God. Oh, I love Joe Calderone. I love her drag king persona. Um, but I think this I think her best actress acceptance speech, were she to actually get one, might be one of the best moments of her whole career. It it truly would transcend a lot of stuff. It'd be unlike anything she's done before. And but also, I guess it truly just depends on what kind of mood she's in that day. Is she in her glamour mode? Is she in her House of Gucci, I'm being terrorized by the real woman kind of persona? Or is she going to be in her stripped back Top Gun mode? Or some kind of persona that we haven't seen yet, even. It's just like we don't know what she has in store. We don't know what she's working on right now. She could be working on some other campaign for some other movie. Like, is she even? Oh, she's got Joker 2 coming out. Oh my God. Oh my God. This is gonna be amazing. Oh,
So I like the implication there that the fly that Patrizia Reggiani sent to terrorize her could possibly attack her on stage and take her out.
like she clearly just hasn't been getting any sleep in the past month just because she's being haunted. It'd be great. And it's like the same way that she, like her character was haunting Adam Driver in House of Gucci. Like she becomes like a phantom in that movie. Yeah, at one
Yes.
point.
Okay. That movie was a real disappointment for me. Outside of her, it's a lot of it is about just men reading spreadsheets and talking about taxes, which is not an interesting topic. But that one sequence where Adam Driver attends the first show that Tom Ford is putting on, and then you have this sort of electro pop song playing, and then Adam Driver with, I don't know why he made this choice. I don't know how he made this choice. He just looks faintly bemused, but he looks out into the crowd in front of him and he sees Lady Gaga devilishly laughing as the sort of strobe lights hit her, and it's amazing. And I think the thing, obviously, Adam Driver, he's not on Gaga's level, but the thing that really makes that scene is the fact that he chooses not to look disturbed in that moment. I would say you keep getting these reaction shots, and he's still sort of bemused. And then he kind of shakes his head as if to imply that, oh, well, that just happened. I'm putting it behind me, and goes back to watching the show. Just the chaos of that scene, I have to respect.
Yeah, House of Gucci is not an interesting movie, and it's only interesting for its actors. Not because they're good. Most of them aren't, but it's just the fact that every single actor is in a different movie. It's just like Gaga is going insane. Adam Driver is so bored. Jeremy Irons is Jeremy Irons. I have no idea what Al Pacino's doing. And then Jared Leto is doing this fucking Pagliacci routine, a sad clown thing, which is maybe his best performance in a long time, maybe ever. But that is not saying much about it. But I think that is more deserving of like an Oscar nomination than like Dallas Buyers Club or something like that. It's truly just five actors who have received completely different directions from Ridley Scott as to what this movie is and what they should be at in it. And it's just like, God, I hate Ridley Scott. He is not a good filmmaker, but he
Yeah,
sometimes accidentally makes things that are funny.
mm. I don't particularly like Ridley Scott either. I just think this is one of those movies where it's more fascinating as a cultural object.
Hmm.
The idea of it is more interesting than the finished product. But it's so weird that they looked at this movie that is clearly supposed to be campy, is clearly targeted at fans of Gaga, and they thought, who has a handle on that very specific comedic tone? Ridley Scott, maker of humorless 3 hour epics about the Bible, or movies that try to convince you that Christopher Columbus, he was actually quite socially progressive, and he did not contribute to the slaughter of Native Americans. Just such a bizarre choice. And I think just the thought of him on set trying to shepherd and corral this ragtag cast of actors, that's entertaining to me, because I do not think that he could contain Gaga.
Hmm. I've been finding a lot recently that so many mediocre movies would become better if they were directed by Baz Luhrmann. It's just like because like for example Elvis, it's just like that movie in its script is so uninteresting. Like it's just the most cookie cutter biopic. But because Baz Luhrmann is Baz Luhrmann, he turns it into the most electric movie of the year. It is amazing. And so I think he could have turned Hasaguchi into something amazing. He could have turned so many disastrous biopics into something amazing. It's just, but he only makes so many movies.
Mm. And yet there are some who make me out to be the villain of
It
the story.
took me a second to realize what you were doing there. Oh my God.
Okay, Tom Hanks, not a perfect figure, but he was in the pocket in that movie. He knew what was up. He understood the assignment, and I have to
Mhm.
respect the commitment.
Yeah, Tom Hanks and Elvis, like on a first watch, you think, what is he doing? Why is he here? Couldn't they get someone more normal? But after multiple watches, you realize he is the person who is the most on the film's wavelength, and that like he knows exactly what he's doing. It is. so good. I
Hmm.
truly love it. At one point, we were talking about the short film Anna and Bella. I don't know how we got here.
Yes, sorry, let's return. We can discuss the
I
second.
once we got to Tom Hanks and Elvis, I'm like, okay, I think we might have gone a bit too far from the topic at hand. Like we were talking about Oscars and stuff, and then we were talking about Lady Gaga, and then it snowballed to a point. And I, if I let myself get on Elvis tangents, I will not come back. So it's just we should really just bring this back. I don't even
Hmm.
know how like where Anna and Bella jumped to Lady Gaga. It's just I don't know. Anything else you'd like to say about the short?
No, I think I've exhausted my opinions on this one, but if you have
I
additional observations.
I don't really. So I'm just going to move on to our second nominee, which is The Big Snit, directed by Richard Condy. This is the first nomination for Richard Condy and the 19th nomination for the National Film Board of Canada. Condy got his start in animation in 1977 with the film Oh Sure, which he made with a government grant, and eventually the film got purchased by the NFB, starting a decades-long partnership with Condy. Uh, Condy, as well as contemporaries of his like Cordell Baker, are credited with almost revolutionizing or at least pushing the boundaries of Canadian animation. Uh, they often push boundaries, not just metaphorical ones, but literal ones, with the character outlines on their films often featuring what's called a boiling effect, where the outline intentionally squiggles a bit, which is a technique that is used a lot more after this point than it is before this point. And it's directly citing the Big Snit as a big influence. Uh, Condi's also known for his comedic stylings, that being choosing to not be funny, or rather drawing humor from absurdity, awkwardness, and a general unsettling tone that can be found in many of his films. But in any case, the film we discussed today is Condi's most famous and most celebrated film, to the point where it was rated as one of the 50 best cartoons ever amongst animators. And yes, Zeta, this is the one that is like a widely celebrated film. The Big Snit is about a married couple playing a game of Scrabble. While the husband struggles with his tray of all E's, the wife goes to do some chores. Husband gets distracted by his favorite TV show, Sawing for Teens, but falls asleep as the news broadcast tells them about impending nuclear war. The couple then proceeds to fight about nothing, completely unaware of the fate that's in store for them. So, I have a really complicated relationship with this film because the first time I watched it, I absolutely hated this film. I thought this was the least funny thing ever created. It was just so irritating to watch, so ugly to look at. I could not stand the thought, just even thinking about this movie. But for some reason, on a rewatch of it for this podcast, I it clicked for me. Like I just
Oh,
understood, like, oh, this is why people like this. I think I get it now. And it's just like because it's not just not being funny. And by the way, I still think it's not very funny. Um, but the thing is that it's not just not being funny. There's actually like a more of an there's a solid emotional core in there. And it's just like it's a film that is about like like relationships, about of marriage that has gone on for decades, and the two people have kind of forgotten why they even started this thing in the first place. And then it's like later in the short, it's like um you have the husband character like looking at an old photo of them together, and then he starts reminiscing about their life, and then they reconnect, and then when the bomb drops and they all die and go to heaven, it's just like the only thing on their mind is just to finish the game of Scrabble together, because that's why they were doing it. They just wanted to spend time with each other. It wasn't about the Scrabble. It wasn't about the fact that the wife has carrots and the husband has all E's in their tiles. It's just about the fact that they wanted to spend some time together. And sure, the worst part of this short is just the constant yelling, or not constant, but once they start yelling and don't stop for like 5 minutes, that is the worst part of it. It is still irritating to me. Even if there are a few good jokes in that moment, it's just I hate their voices. They're so irritating. But there are a few good moments, and it's fine. That's my final verdict on it. It's a fine, okay, good, maybe even good short. Do I think it deserves to be one of the 50 greatest shorts ever created as listed by animators? No. But also that list is not a very good list. It has things like Coal Black and Seven Dwarfs on there, which I think most people would agree shouldn't be on there. If you know what that is, you will probably agree with me on that fact. If you don't know what it is, don't worry about it. Do not look it up. But in any case, the big snit is better than I thought it was before, but is still not great. But it's all right. It's all right. It needs a bit of work, but it's all right. What about you, Zita? What did you think?
Hmm. No, I think what you point out is important. This does fall into that subset of comedy that is very intentionally abrasive and off-putting and challenging in its own way. And I also had some difficulty getting past all of the yelling and just how unpleasant it was to
Mhm.
watch this at times. I think my only background experience really with feature length Canadian animated films, and God, I'm sounding like such a basic normie here admitting this, but is the Triplets of Belleville. I'm sorry, I'm sure you're rolling your eyes on me,
I'm
but
not rolling my eyes at you. The Triplets of Belleville is great.
yeah, it is great. But I think that's a movie that sort of aims for a similar tone in a way, but is a lot more delightful and pleasurable. And there are so many different sort of sensory pleasures that you can derive from that film. And I would say this movie just doesn't have the same sense of adventure and exploration and kind of curiosity about interpersonal relationships. Having said that, I I've said this a lot, but I have to respect what he was going for. I do think it's very difficult to commit this hard to making an animated short that is this alienating in a way, and for it to have been such a hit on the animated short circuit in the mid 80s, it is intriguing to me because in a lot of these other not marginal, sorry, that's an offensive term, but in a lot of these other categories where you get the sense that voters are not really paying attention to what gets nominated. Sometimes you just end up with really bland filler nominees. And while I can't say that I unabashedly loved this, uh, I like the fact that it's so weird. And I have to imagine that it was an influence on these later Canadian animated films. And if I'm wrong, then just dismiss everything I've said.
No, you're right. This film is like incredibly influential. Like not only is not just this film, but Richard Condy's whole thing. Like his art style and his sense of humor is so influential. It's like you can see remnants of it in like Ed, Ed and Eddie, and it's like even The Simpsons has a few references to it in its oeuvre. It's especially in its early days, and it's just like this film and just Canadian animation at this time. It is influential, and it's like I going back to this and watching this film and watching it for this podcast, it's made me appreciate it more, but it's like I said at the beginning that I have a complicated relationship with this, and it's like that is a truer statement than I can even explain. It's just I appreciate like what it's given us in terms of like its influence on other animation, and it's just like can't. But do I appreciate the film itself in terms of what it's doing? Kind of. there's parts of it I really appreciate. Parts of it I think I would rather die than watch again. But it's a movie that exists, and I just have to accept that.
I get that. It's just one of those movies that you, on a personal level, don't vibe with. And I think I'm in the same boat. And perhaps, like you, I could come to enjoy or appreciate it more with repeat viewings.
Mhm. And I just want to say that, before we recorded, I did, just for the listeners out there, I told Zita that one of these three films that we're talking about today had is like internationally renowned, is an incredibly influential film. But I didn't tell her which one. I wanted to keep it a surprise. And then you said, "I hope it's the Big Snit." And it's just like, I'm curious why you said that. And also you said before that you had an inkling as to which film it was. And it's like, was it the Big Snit that you thought it was?
Yes, that was definitely the one that I had narrowed in on. Even though I didn't love it, you can definitely sense that this represented a great leap forward in a way. Oh God, no,
Not that word. Not
that was
that
a
phrase.
terrible choice of word. Oh God, making references to the Chinese Cultural Revolution and Mao Zedong. Okay, please overlook that. It was a massive progression for this art form, and I guess to me, it's sort of like, in terms of live action films, watching a Jean-Luc Godard movie or something. Where I don't love it. I will not pretend to understand what makes it so intellectually rigorous. But from everything that I've read, other filmmakers are obsessed with it. And it led to this explosion of creativity in the minds of so many of its viewers. So clearly, there's something that I'm just not getting.
I'll say that I think The Big Snit is better than most Jean-Luc Godard movies. I just wanted to say that.
Ooh. But are you, so Jackie, question, is there one that you like, or is there an outlier there?
For Jean-Luc Godard, there is actually one. Let me look up its title real quick. Because I have a friend who was like really obsessed with Jean-Luc Godard and it encouraged me to watch more of his movies. And I did watch more of his movies, and I kept not liking them, or rather, I was bored by just so many of them. But there was a short film that he made. In the Darkness of Time is what it's called, and that one, it's just kind of like a video essay more than it is like an actual like short film. But I really liked it. It was really good. It's just like, which makes me more intrigued to watch more of his short films rather than his feature films, because maybe when he's like forced to operate in a smaller amount of time, he'll be forced to, not waste that time, not waste my time with his films. So we'll have to wait and see. It's like, I'll probably, after the best animated short era, I'll probably do an episode on like Jean-Luc Godard's short films, and we'll find out together. Maybe not you and me together, but me and the listeners out there here together, uh, what I think of Jean-Luc Godard's short films.
Oh God, yes. I thought that you were going to come out as a closet fan of King Lear or something and reveal that, oh no, his 80s period, that's when he was doing his best work.
Well, I am actually curious to see some from his later period, because like most of what I watched is from like the 60s, the period that people pretend is good. Uh, but so that makes me curious, like if the films people say are bad, maybe those are secretly good. And like King Lear specifically, I have been curious about, just because, as from what I understand, it's a film that was made entirely as a fuck you to Golden Globus.
Yes, okay, because it famously begins with the audio of one of either Golan or Globus calling him saying, hey, when are you sending us the final cut of this film? This movie has to premiere at the Cannes Film Festival in a couple of days. And the implication from the director is that, hey, look at this asshole. How dare he ask me for the final cut of my film? And there's also another behind the scenes story about, I think, the novelist Norman Mailer was scheduled to appear in the film. And what Jean Luc Godard wanted him to do was to play a version of himself who is incestuously attracted to his daughter, who was also scheduled to appear in the film as herself. He said, I'd rather not do that, and then left. And in the film, you get no mention of what he asked him to do. There's this implication that, oh, yes, he drove off because he couldn't handle the truth. He couldn't handle the intensity of my brilliance.
uh yeah, it's like it seems like almost like Dada in a sense. It's just like a film that is like going against the entire idea of art as a concept. And it's like maybe I'm using that term Dada like a completely incorrect way. I don't know. Oh, but I think it's more interesting to me as a concept than like Breathless or like Vivre sa vie or any of his like more acclaimed films.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's also a part of me that thinks back on the fact that maybe you did just have to be there to understand why it was so earth shaking. But then I remember that, oh no, there are lots of modern cinephiles who happen to be in our social circle who do love these movies and who do feel as though they speak to them on a deeper level.
Mhm,
So clearly, that's just something I'm missing.
mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are obsessed with Godard to this day, and many of them are annoying. Some of them are my friends, and those aren't annoying, but a lot of Godard fans are very annoying. Just like
Yes.
most French people are annoying.
Okay, this is one of the sort of Jackie qualities that I admire most. You're you are so unashamed to air your Francophobic views.
I I just think it's fun because like what are the French gonna do about it?
Yeah, it's sorry, it's never racist because they're Caucasian.
Yeah,
You're not insulting
yeah.
a minority group.
And if I get banned from France, so be it. I don't want to go there anyway.
Yes,
And
yes.
I'm just thinking back to a recent episode where it's just like oh, so Frederick Beck is a filmmaker we talk about in a few episodes. And he's French Canadian. He's from Quebec. Or he's not from Quebec, but he lived there for like a long, long time. And my guest said, thank you, or like shout out to the French Canadians, and it's like, or much respect to French Canadians, and it's like, no, they don't. They don't deserve your respect. And it's just like I just really just I don't even know where this Francophobia comes from. Maybe it's because just like most French people that are notable are just awful. Like they always have some kind of awful trait about them, whether they're like extremely racist, extremely misogynistic, or like are intensely into conspiracy theories, like Marianne Cotillard, or some so many other crazy things with them. And it's
Mhm.
just like the
I
only the only
I
French person I've
want to
enjoyed is
know.
Agnes Varda.
She's Belgian though, right?
Well, yes, but that's kind of French. Like that's diet French. And also
Diet.
she lived her life in French. It's the same way that Frederick Beck is Quebecois. It's like he wasn't born there. He didn't grow up there, but he's made that his entire personality for most of his life. So I
Hmm.
count him as French Canadian, even though he wasn't born there or anything. And so Anya Svarda, I imagine she is French to me, even though she might have been like born in Belgium or something like that.
Okay. Imagine walking up to a Belgian person and saying, "Oh, you're a diet Frenchman. You're French light."
they 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 immediately beat me up, maybe kill me.
Uh, anyway, sorry. Getting back to
The big
it's
snit.
yeah. Do you have anything else to say about
Um,
it?
I feel like I should. Like, what was a moment that stood out to you? And I think we haven't really delved in on to like any of the specific scenes or jokes or anything because I think there's a few things that are notable. Like, I really enjoy the sawing for teens gag. I enjoy how like it's very clearly meant to be like porn or something, and like him sawing the table is meant to be him jerking off or something. But also just the absurdity of like a TV show that's all about just sawing. And like it has mad like crazy fans who like will saw things in their house along with the show. And it's just like that that's the kind of absurdity I really enjoy.
Hmm. In terms of what really stood out to me, I liked the ending, I will say, in part because things kind of slowed down as much as they can in this animation short. And I really liked this happened throughout the short, I guess, but just how exaggerated the lips or the mouth of the female half of this couple, and just the fact that towards the end of this shot, she gets. Sorry, I'm talking about her as though she's an actual human being. The animators allow this character to have a lot of opportunities to sort of emphasize just how bizarre her mouth is. And you talk about the disturbing imagery in this shot. I just it just made me think. So every time she sort of opens her mouth, because there's no flesh on the side of her face, is the top half of her head just going to fall off? It creeps me out.
Yeah, I her whole physiognomy is kind of weird. And it's like it's really hard to tell where exactly her mouth is. Like it's just a slight like pink discoloration on either side of like the mouth slit, the part where her head disconnects. It's just like and there's like that slight pink discoloration to represent like lipstick or something. But outside of that, it just it very much blends in with her neck and head. And it's just like it's hard to tell where their mouth is. And it's like that is also a running theme with a lot of Richard Conde's work. It's that like his characters always have weird mouths and bad teeth. It's just it's it's just his style. Oh, I guess. But yeah. And I guess since you mentioned the ending, I do really like the point where it's just like the nuclear explosion goes off. It's like as they're like opening the door to let their dog out or whatever, and you see like this brief flash in the keyhole, and suddenly when they open the door, it's like they're all in heaven, their houses they have wings and everything, and it's just like it's a very smooth, sudden kind of thing, and it's just like that kind of just like instantaneous thing, just really it works. That part of it works.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the comedy, as you point out, is quite sophisticated when you boil it down to a granular level. The sawing for teens gag. I imagine that that took maybe not quite a bit of time to come up with, but it is an inspired concept. And making a masturbation joke, that's hardly original. I think it's very difficult to come up with a new angle on that topic. And I was sort of surprised they did succeed in doing that.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's like they make it subtle enough where it's like you don't you don't immediately recognize it as like a masturbation joke, but then it's just like once you think about it and the way his wife is reacting to it, it's just like, oh yeah, this is what that's meant to be because that's the whole thing about it. It's the way that the film like it speaks on truths using these absurd conversations and scenarios. I guess that's why people like it.
I guess, and I also wonder, I'm making assumptions about your critical sensibility right now, but there are other cinephiles who seem to be far more sort of impressed and delighted by pieces of art that kind of poke fun at or satirize the behaviors of the middle class. And I don't know whether you're quite as delighted by that as the Jonathan Rosenbaums or the Sally Jane Blacks of the world.
I guess I'm not. I guess like yeah, I guess I'm just not. It's just not my choice in terms of satire. I don't know.
Mm, yeah, yeah. And
I'm not sure what it says about me, but
yeah, I don't know. You're not as much of a Leninist as you claim to be.
I mean, I wouldn't exactly call this film like leftist though.
No.
Like it, I and it's like Jean-Luc Godard is a poser too.
Yeah, he definitely is. And he's probably an anti-Semite. And I'm not even sure that his ideas really hang together. I know he made a movie in the early 2000s where I think he devotes 70% of the running time to accusing Steven Spielberg of not having a sense of sort of the weight and the gravity of the travesty that is the Holocaust, and then implies that he hasn't done anything to help with Holocaust education and should be ashamed of himself. And I think the part of the problem with the whole argument is that Steven Spielberg, he is a Jewish filmmaker, and he and his ancestors have had to face anti-Semitic prejudice. Jean-Luc Godard is a Frenchman who has a habit of making anti-Semitic comments. So you don't really have the right to speak on that issue.
Mhm. Yeah, Jean-Luc Godard, wrong about a lot of things.
Yes. And sexist. Anyway, moving
Yes. Uh, Further just emphasizing the fact that like most Frenchmen are kind of shitty, if not a lot shitty.
on. Yeah. Please
But
don't come after me, any of my French fans, if you listen to this, but
oh, you're saving yourself from being
I,
associated with me,
I'm
I
I'm
see.
I'm throwing you into the line of fire.
It's fine. I've done this to myself. It's I feel like this also just comes out like every time we have record podcast episode. I feel like it's almost always like with you that my like anti-Frenchness comes out for some reason. I think it's just because we end up talking about like international cinema a lot, and like in our comparisons to like whatever we happen to be watching, whether it be animated shorts for my podcast or uh, uh 300 Passions for yours. It's just the Frenchness. The French come up, and when the French come up, I must deride them.
Yes. Even though you're attracted to Xavier Dolan.
No, no, I'm not. What?
You do you remember your review of I Killed My Mother?
Oh yeah, he is pretty cute in that movie, but it's like nowadays he's annoying. I hate him.
You don't like his trademark arrogant smirk or half grin or whatever it is.
I he he peaked with his first movie that he made when he was still a teenager, which is not something any good person should do. Like if you were
Oh.
good at filmmaking, you would be better than your 19-year-old self or whatever.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to name and shame you with this review. So
Don't do
what
it. It
what you
doesn't matter.
wrote people keep talking about how Xavier Dolan wrote this when he was 16 and produced, directed, starred in it when he was 20. But I think we're all forgetting how hot he is.
Yeah. Okay. What does it matter? He sucks.
Anyway, moving on.
I have changed as a person since then. Like, when did I write that?
Okay, it's 4 years old. So yes, we
Yes.
contain
4
multitude.
years ago.
Yeah.
2019.
Mm, yes. And maybe COVID was already in the air. Maybe
Shut
it was
up.
okay.
He's Savio Dolan is a transphobic asshole. I don't want to be
Oh
associated with
no,
him.
God, I did not know. Oh,
Yeah, you don't watch the film Lawrence anyways. I had to suffer through that.
oh Jesus. Okay.
It's God, it's awful. Anyway, um, let's just move on to
Yeah.
let's get out of this
Sorry.
space. Let's let's move on to our third and final nominee, which is Second Class Mail, directed by Alison Snowden. This is the first nomination for Snowden and the only one she would receive without her husband, David Fine, next to her. The two met at the National Film and Television School in England, and together they made this film, though Snowden was definitely the lead creative on the project. Fine was just a helping hand. But it's from this film that the two would then later move to Canada together and get married and make even more Oscar nominated films, including one winner. Isn't that what true romance is? Uh, I'll stop myself there, as the couple have three other films nominated, though one doesn't credit either filmmaker on it. Uh, so, what do we have in store for their first nomination? Second Class Mail is about an elderly woman who purchases a blow up companion for herself. Zita, this is your second year with a film about blow up sex dolls in it. What'd you think of Second Class Mail?
I thought it was really funny, and I do think it uses this concept, which is sort of at its core fairly simple, in inventive ways. And I do think that in the canon of great sex doll movies, it is kind of up there with Lars and the Real Girl and Doll. And the simplicity of the animation really stood out to me for obvious reasons. And I do think, much as you, someone who is more knowledgeable about the history of animation, have pointed out that something like Anna and Bella does use a relatively simple style. I do love something that you can only really get in animation, just this sense of things appearing out of thin air or disappearing. And it's just one of those wonderful things where you're reminded of just how kind of magical the medium is, in a
Mhm.
way where you really can just create anything. Whereas with a live action film, obviously we have CGI now, but there is this sense that things are more practical, and in a way that artists are confined to specific ideas. They can't really move beyond that. And I was really into the scenes in this one when, for example, we see her walking along, heading towards the post office, sending off her letter, and just the fact that it's essentially just a blue screen, and then kind of out of nowhere, the post office emerges before us.
Mhm.
And to me, that's one of those moments that really reminds you of what a great medium animation is for cinema. I sound like Guillermo del Toro right now, but
Animation is cinema.
yeah, I'm okay. I'm sorry, I'm annoyed by that. Who's saying that it's not cinema at this
Uh,
point?
I mean, I guess a lot of people were like, there is this kind of classical sensibility that like animation is something that is meant only for children, and it's like it's not it. A lot of people don't really count it alongside like uh quote unquote real movies. Like this is, I guess, more so like an opinion amongst the populace that like isn't really that into movies. It's like they only think like animation is Disney. That's all that animation really is. And so it's just like that's where that idea really comes from. And it's like a lot of people are trying to like dispel that, but also like they just the one problem I have with the animation and cinema movement is that a lot of the people who are like advocates of it are people who only watch like Disney movies or DreamWorks movies. And it's just like there's more to animation. And it's like you're on their side. You think this is all the animation is. Please just watch something else. Like, just watch some foreign movie. Watch fucking Son of the White Mayor or something like that. Watch this. Watch Second Class Mail. It's just like, but yes, I definitely agree with your comments about like the whole animation style. I enjoy how like soft it is. It's like there's like all these like little fuzzy edges and everything's so round. It's like a very pleasant, comfy, cozy kind of environment that we get here. Here, and it's like, and I definitely like I agree with your thoughts about how like one of the great things about animation is the way that things can not only like become one thing so easily, but the way it all like transforms. It's such a fluid motion and for one thing to become another thing and just like in the transition between scenes. And it's like I think back to another nominee, or another a winner in this category, Closed Mondays. Is which is a claymation film, but still it has a lot of really interesting like transformations. And it's like in the middle, you just get this like blob of clay, just morphing around until it becomes another thing. And it's just like that kind of thing is something that all animation really excels at when it's done right, at least. It's just mind-blowing. And yeah, it's just the one complaint I have about this film, though, is the fact that it is so short and so simple, which is admirable sometimes, but it, I didn't think this was all that funny. I thought it was just it just kind of came and went for me because it's just like she goes to the post office, sends the letter, or that she gets the box, she sets up the blow up doll, it's there, and then a fly passes by, she hugs it, it blows up, that's it. And it's just like, yes, it's there's beauty in simplicity, but also it just wasn't that funny for me.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Maybe I appreciated it because it came as a sort of antidote to the big snitch, where there are so many ideas, there's so much going on, and it's almost difficult to keep up. And this movie, with its sort of pared down simplicity, really appealed to me. At the same time, and this is one of the most obvious signs that I do not know enough about animation as an art form, but I do think that your stereotypical animated film is made to be watched by children, and therefore it's extremely colorful. There are loud noises, there's sort of a convoluted plot in a way, and so seeing this sort of pared down piece of animation for adults was kind of interesting. Then again, it doesn't represent that much of a shift from the other nominees in the category, so I shouldn't have been that blown away by it.
Mhm. But how, in your opinion, how does this compare to the other animated short nominee that features blow up sex dolls, which is Dream Doll, directed by Bob Godfrey and Slatko Grgic?
I prefer Dream Doll. I
I
have to,
also prefer Dream Doll.
yeah. But from what you've described, it sounds like this was sort of just a launch pad for this couple, and I
Yes.
would know that some of their later shots might be more experimental or immersive.
So yeah, like they made this film like while at college, I believe, like while they were at the National Society or whatever I said it was called, National Film and Television School, well, in England. And and yeah, and it's just like there are later films, they do have this similar style going on, although it's a bit more, it's a lot less, their future films are a lot less softer than like this was, and it's more like defined shapes and colors and stuff. I would be really interested to hear your thoughts on some of their later films, like George and Rosemary or Bob's Birthday, and things like that, because they are like these stories about like they're stories about people, and it's just like they're stories about like regular relationships that happen to be told through animation, and it's like they're honestly their later films can are kind of like Annabella was, except maybe less Dutch and and uh more defined animation and backgrounds and stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think you might vibe with them if you watch some of their other films.
Okay. Yeah. I'll definitely make an effort to seek them out. And look, I root for artistic couples who can find a way to work together without having their relationship implode, because that's the way that things generally seem to go.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like they're the next Faith and John Hubley. It's like they they're an animation dream team came together.
Mm, yeah. And it's lovely in its way.
Yeah, this is just a nice, calming, soothing short. And it's like while I didn't really think it was funny, it's like it's just a nice vibe. It's like it's just nice to be in this world for a few minutes. It's
Yeah.
like that's that is really what all animation, like, oh, well, not all animation, but a lot of animation hopes for. It's just to be a world that you'll want to visit again, just to really just take you somewhere else for a bit, take you to another reality even. And it's just nice when animation does it right, does it well.
Hmm.
Yeah. I guess we we were done talking about this one.
Yes, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I just I just noticed that neither of us had anything else to say. Uh, but yeah, now that we've gone through and talked about these three nominees, let's rank them all. Zeta, start us off with your number three.
So this was kind of tough for me because, as you probably noted, I had a mixed response to a couple of these films or short films. At the end of the day, I went with Second Class Mail in the third spot.
Interesting. I went for second class mail as well. I while it's just very empty as a film, which, in terms of its visual style, I think really works for it, but in terms of its story, really detracts from it. And I wish there was just a little bit more in terms of whether it's comedy or in terms of the emotionality. Like maybe if we had more setting up like this woman's life, like before she gets the doll in her life. Like if we had like a mirror of that shot where she's sitting on the couch, except there's no one next to her. And it's just I guess they did do that, but I wish that came before the whole post office sequence. I don't know. I don't know. I shouldn't be like trying to remake this film in my mind. I just didn't like as is. I didn't enjoy it as much as I would like, and maybe if it was different, I would like it more. You're number
Yes,
two.
I basically concur with your opinion there. And my second choice was The Big Snit. I think you made a decent argument for it being the most influential film to be nominated this year. And I'm sure that a real aficionado of animated shorts would get upset that I'm not automatically putting it first, but I did have some pretty significant reservations, and I can't bring myself to fully overlook them.
Yeah, my number two is also The Big Snit, which was a real surprise for me going into this because of how I mentioned how I really did not like this film. But the fact that it's number two should be an impressive feat in itself. Like in on my letterbox rating, my rating went from 2 stars to 3.5, which is a really big jump, and which is really rare to happen as I've been rewatching these shorts. Like very few films have such a big jump in terms of my opinion on them. So well done, Big Snit. You managed to get second place, but it seems we both agree that the number one film is the film that the Academy picked, Anna and Bella.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. And it ended up being sort of an easy choice for me. I just think there are more memorable sequences in this shot than there are in the other two. It wasn't as off-putting as the big snitch, and I have to imagine that in its own way, it was influential.
Mhm. Well,
And
I'm not
uh,
even sure how influential Anna and Bella is, but yeah.
I think Borga or Borg Ring,
Mhm.
that's the coolest name of any of the four people listed here as possible winners. And even Silla van Dijk, another cool name. The Dutch, they're just coming in with the
Mhm.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
impressive. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it looks cool.
Yeah, in my script, I wrote out like how to pronounce Celia Van Dyke's name because it's like it looks very Dutch, but it when you I looked up like how to pronounce it, it's just like, oh, it's just it's these are common English names. It's just spelled weirdly. But also for
Yeah.
Borg Ring, I did look up how like Borg is pronounced, and it's not pronounced like Borg. There's a weirder way to pronounce it, but I I can't pronounce it that way. Like I try to replicate the way the sounds were coming out of my computer, but my mouth just could not do that. So Borg Ring it is. I'm
Mhm.
sorry to Mr. Ring. I'm sure you're rolling in your grave right now by me mispronouncing your name, but uh I'm sorry. That's it. I'm just sorry. I feel I've done a real disservice to you in this podcast because I didn't buy your autobiography to really give you the proper story you deserve. But oh well, you're my number one. I did defend your right that you should have had an Oscar, not Miss Celia Van Dyke, because it really does seem like he is the main uh creative on this film, which is what the Academy rules do say, like the prominent creative or it doesn't even say the word producer there. It just says like creative influence or something like that. But yeah, I wish Borgring had an Oscar. And he kind of does because he made this, but also he doesn't because he didn't win. It was his name wasn't on it. Oh well.
It's not as stupid as the Academy Award for Best International Feature going to a country.
I actually like that. I think the international film category, the way it works, is really fun because it turns it into like sort of like an Olympics of film, where it's just like each country gets to submit like one film to compete in the competition, and just like and then it's kind of like this is going to sound like a really dumb comparison, especially coming from American, but it's like Eurovision, but for movies, where it's just like they get the initial round and then they get to like the short list and they compete there with the same movie, and then it's just like then it just like narrows down until you get one winner. And I like it. I think it's fun. And it's like still like the director does get to keep the Oscar even though they don't technically win it. Like in the Academy records, it doesn't say that it went to the director. It went to the country of Italy or Japan or whatever. Which, I think that part kind of sucks, but also like I think they should win jointly. Like representing India, like Bong Joon-ho, or why did I say India and Bong Joon-ho? Representing South Korea, Bong Joon-ho won the
Famous.
best international film. I just said a random country, then said a random director. I didn't think about how they would interact. Although that's not like totally unheard of because like Akira Kurosawa directed a Russian winner of the category, Dersu Ozara. So uh, directors from different countries can direct films representing a different country than from where they're really from.
Hmm.
It's more about like what country really produced the film.
Yes, I I guess part of the problem for me is that the people who get to select these films that are submitted for nomination are just random politicians. That's how you end up with the good boss being put forward by Spain instead of parallel mothers, just making the wildest choices. I guess that's fun in its own way. I just think it's an odd way to structure the category.
Mhm. Well, yeah, it's just like each country's own film board, which each country decides like who gets on
Yeah.
the film board. And I think it's for Spain specifically, I think it's just like kind of Pedro Almodovar kind of pissed off the other Spanish filmmakers with his, you know, I don't know exactly the story behind it because I don't enjoy thinking about Pedro Almodovar, but I know that he kind of pissed people off. And so that's why he rarely ever gets submitted for international film, like ever since All About My Mother or whatever. But yeah, that hasn't stopped him from getting Oscars. Like he won best screenplay.
Oh, he did, yes, much to your dismay. And
Yeah.
I find your sort of passionate dislike of his work to be very funny, just because everyone else in our social circle loves him.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that you are so in conflict with someone like Ronaldo is very funny to me.
Yeah, my devoted listeners, Christoph and Ronaldo, they both really, really love him, and I just can't stand him. I can't stand him.
Yes, and I just want to know, so he was on that famous Cannes jury that was headed by, I think, Will Smith. What do you think that their conversations were like?
Oh my God. When was this? Do you know?
I think it was 2016. I'm going to look this up.
Uh, like I need to look up that whole like Cannes lineup just to see like what are these films that they watched, everything. Oh, Will the first thing I look up after searching Can Will Smith clashes with Pedro Almodovar over Netflix.
Oh, okay. So sorry, it was the 2017 Cannes Film Festival. So this was the year where I would say they controversially selected The Square as the Palme d'Or winner instead of 120 beats per minute.
Yeah, let me look up that whole 2017 Cannes Film Festival. We got Pedro Almodovar, Marin Odd, Fan Bing Bing, Park Chan-wook. A whole wow, this is a really stacked lineup. Like you got a lot of really big names in here.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, what are these films that they discussed? It's the Square One, and then You Were Never Really Here is really good. Wonderstruck, Rodin, blah, blah, blah. Okja, Meyerowitz Stories, Loveless, Killing a Sacred Deer. I'm wondering. I'm first wondering what Will Smith thought of what's it called? A Double Lover, the Francois Ozon film, which is which is like an erotic thriller or whatever. It doesn't seem like his style totally.
No, this is perfect for him. This taps into all of his fears and anxieties because it's about a woman who flagrantly cheats on her boyfriend with with a man who looks exactly like him. So his double, I think they're long lost twins or something. But sorry, that would have been a horror movie for him. What what if Jada went out and found a more attractive looking version of Will Smith and started sleeping with him?
I'm I'm just imagining like Gemini Man, except it has Jada Pinkett in there. It's like it turns into like an erotic thriller instead of like the it's shot in 48 frames per second.
Yes.
Oh my God. Or like Killing of a Sacred Deer. Or like what's Will Smith gonna think of that?
Yeah. Who
But
knows?
yeah,
Oh. even a happy end. Considering his fraught family dynamic, I wonder if he could relate.
Maybe. I'm the Square winning this, like it makes sense
Mm,
because it's very much like in the same way that the Academy like often rewards movies about movies. It's like I think the Cannes jury might be more responsive to like a film about art because like that's what they're all there to celebrate. And so it's like the school though also I think it might have won just for Terry Notary's big scene. Uh, Terry Notary, he plays like this guy who thinks he's a gorilla, and he has this big scene in the movie where he kind of stalks around this whole dinner or scene with all these rich people around them. It's like first they're really enchanted by him, but like the silence of it gets really intense. And I think at the end of it, he attacks one of the patrons there, and it's just it's a fantastic scene in an otherwise mediocre movie. And I imagine that scene is probably why this film won because it's a really great scene. It's the most memorable part of the movie, but also maybe people, enjoy the kind of shallow criticisms of, the elites and the arts, art culture, whatever, something stupid like that.
everybody had Klaus Bang fever.
Mhm.
They were
Yeah,
obsessed. They couldn't get enough.
yeah,
I, yeah, that movie has aged so poorly, and they at Cannes, one of their big blind spots, they're very into any satire that's about how maybe rich people are bad, maybe they're selfish, and maybe, newsflash, they exploit poor people, and
yes,
that could have a connection to capitalism. I don't know if you knew that. Mm.
capitalism.
And they just, every time, they seem to be sort of mind blown by this concept. You can make good movies about this subject, but they seem to go in for the most lazy, obvious, satirical barbs about this issue. And I'll be interested to see what happened to Ruben Östlund's reputation. Because I would say around the time of Force Majeure, that was probably when it was at its best. And now, uh, his next movie, I think people will have their knives out for it. Then again, I thought that would happen with Triangle of Sadness, and people loved it. So maybe he'll be able to keep fooling people.
Yeah, who really knows? It's like the fact that people enjoy Triangle of Sadness is such a enigma to me. It's just like that movie was just so unfunny. It seemed to actively work against its own jokes, folks, just by dragging them out for so long. And it just did not work. And I just have no idea why people liked it. It and the fact that it's like in terms of, the Oscars, the thing we are talking about, it's just like the fact it got like multiple nominations, including Best Picture or Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay. Like, how did this happen? Who allowed this? But then again, it's just like it's the kind of class commentary that rich people can really enjoy. And so it's just like, yeah, of course it got in because people suck. People are stupid.
Wow, this episode really took a misanthropic turn. But I agree. You always get movies like this every now and then. I think the thing with him, though, that makes him especially reactionary is that the message of Triangle of Sadness isn't even really that, oh, it's bad that poor people get exploited and we need to find a better alternative to capitalism. It's that, oh no, basically all human beings are evil. And if you give poor people the opportunity, they are also evil. And so, really, it's everyone's fault. It's not these evil rich billionaires who are ruining the lives of millions of people. No, no, let's not be so idealistic. And I think in certain hands, maybe that bleak message could have been conveyed in an interesting way. I just feel as though it's a movie that kind of lets rich people off easy. It doesn't make
Mhm.
you uncomfortable if you happen to be an extraordinarily privileged person in the audience. And so I don't really think it serves the purpose that its proponents might claim it does.
Mhm. It it just it's just not a good movie. It is dumb, and I don't like it. That's my that's my main thoughts.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
I
you you have all these like deep, complex thoughts, like going
oh you God.
dive into these complex ideas, and I'm just like, nah, yeah, it sucks.
No, no, you've come into this episode with a lot of intellectual firepower, and as ever, I'm impressed by your eloquence and your wit.
Yeah, if you think that like this is, well, I don't even know what I was trying to say there, but I just wanted to say that uh the next episode we're recording, which will be the first one to come out of our double feature of episodes, is going to feature a lot less of me uh like theorizing and things like that, because thieves like us. Not to spoil that episode for you, I guess, because by the time this episode comes out, it'll be months old or a month old. But that's going to be such a quiet episode for me.
Hmm.
Or maybe
Yeah,
not. Like maybe this prediction's wrong.
could be. Yes, maybe you'll have lots to say about
Thieves
those
like
topics.
us.
Hmm. Yes.
But yeah.
Okay, sorry. Final note, final thing I'm going to say. I love it when you can tell that a reviewer is clearly grasping at straws, has no interesting observations to make about a film, and obviously that can produce some agonizingly dull reviews. I like it when they're forced to just sort of go off on a tangent about something that's very loosely related to the film itself, while still trying to pretend that, oh, yes, I'm telling you something about this movie. That can be entertaining in its own way.
That's kind of like us. Like we just constantly go on tangents about the movies that we don't like.
Yes.
We I just realized we this is still part of the best animated short episode. And like we've
Yes.
been in the ending part of it for so long. We've just been
Yeah.
talking for so long. It's just like the episode should be over by now, but it's not. This has to be like the longest like host rank segment of one of my episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sorry, I won't keep you for too
No,
long.
don't
You can.
worry. Like all the stuff we talk about here, it's like it's only pushing us like this is all just a two-part episode, so it's just like doesn't matter how long we talk in this one. It's just like we'll just talk more in the next one. So maybe we're just getting it all out.
It's like going to my analyst. Yeah. As an actress from the 60s would say, I've never been to therapy, but if I ever did, I would do it just to say that. And you listen to any interview from an actress sort of in the 80s who had her heyday back then, and there's just constant, yeah, I was talking with my analyst, and he said that I needed to do this in my love life. And then I met Blake Edwards outside in the reception, and we fell in love and got married. I don't know why I'm doing the nasally American accent because it's Julie Andrews who described that, but
I love the term analyst. Like I'm kind of disappointed that that term fell out of fashion, and it's just like I think like maybe it's just like the whole idea of a psychoanalyst. It's just like it's we've fallen. I guess it's just different professions. I guess and it's like we stop seeing analysts, we start seeing therapists because that's we don't need to be analyzed. We need to be therapized.
yes, yes, you do.
Mhm.
Then again, sorry, having an analyst, it does make it sound as though, oh no, my brain is so complex that someone needs to get in there and analyze it. Whereas therapy
Analyze
sounds,
this.
I'm sounding like a Scientologist or something. Therapy just sounds so much softer in a way, which is a good thing. Obviously, I think
Mhm.
therapy is great and people should get it. I just think the older terms were sort of more fun to pull out.
Mhm. Yeah, and I like so when I hear the term analyst, I think of course I think of Sondheim first. And I think of the song Getting Married Today, and it's just like there's a line in it where it's like I have to call my analyst or I used to know Getting Married Today off the back of my hand, but it's just like I can't remember how the line goes. It because it is like a very quick patter song. It's just like it's just a lot of words at once, and in order to get it, I'd probably need to get in the rhythm of it. But there's a line about an analyst in there, and it's a good line, but I just can't remember it. It's like call my analyst and explain.
Yes, yes.
But yeah. Anyway, thank you, Zita, for coming on the show, and thank you, listener, for tuning in. This has been the short podcast about short films. Until next time, goodbye.